She watched him throw her entire life onto the lawn during her mother's funeral. 42 years of marriage, 4 decades of sacrifice, everything, her career, her dreams, her independence, buried under a pile of clothes and memories. And in that moment, something shifted. At 68 years old, she made a decision. She would take her life back, but not with anger, with strategy, with a secret plan 42 years in the making. This is the untold story of a woman who chose invisibility until the day she chose power instead. If you've ever felt overlooked, if you've sacrificed your dreams for someone else, if you've stayed quiet while being treated like you don't matter, this story is for you. Welcome to Her Untold Stories. I'm your host, Jessica. But before we begin, subscribe because stories like these need to be heard, and I'm about to tell you something that will make you question everything. Her name is Patricia. When she tells her story, she doesn't start with the day everything fell apart. She starts much earlier. The real tragedy began long before that funeral. It began in 1954. A young black girl in Georgia was told, "Girls like you have different paths." This phrase, seemingly innocent, would echo through 6 decades. Patricia was bright, exceptionally bright, but brightness alone couldn't overcome the weight of expectation, the weight of being a woman, the weight of being a black woman in the 1950s. By 26, Patricia had worked 3 jobs to pay for community college. She had ambitions, real ones. Then she met Robert. He was successful, handsome, stable. When he asked her to marry him, she said yes. When he asked her to stop working to focus on being a wife and mother, she said yes. And in saying yes to him, she said no to everything she had worked for. What Patricia didn't know was that her sacrifice would become invisible. Not ignored, invisible. She raised 2 children, managed household finances, attended every school event, did it all while supporting Robert's career. And somehow, her work became background noise. Robert would tell friends about his accomplishments, never mentioning that Patricia had pressed his suit, prepared his meals, managed his schedule, raised his children. Patricia became the invisible infrastructure of a life everyone believed Robert had built himself. And the hardest part, Patricia internalized this invisibility. She began measuring her worth not by what she accomplished, but by how well she supported Robert, how happy her family was, how seamless the household ran. For 42 years, that's what she believed. 38 years were good enough. Robert was attentive. He provided. By most measures, he was a good husband. But there was a pattern. Patricia would share an idea at dinner. Robert would listen, nod, then repeat it an hour later as his own. The children would credit him. Patricia managed the entire household budget, planned the future, researched investments, made strategic financial decisions. Then Robert would sign the documents. She was the architect. He was the signature. But Patricia never fought back, never demanded recognition. In her mind, that's what marriage was. That's what love meant. Quiet sacrifice. The years passed. Children grew up. Grandchildren were born. Holidays became memories. Then, somewhere around year 40, something changed inside Patricia's mind. It wasn't dramatic, not a sudden epiphany. It was quiet, slow, a shift that happens when you finally stop believing the lie you've been told about yourself. Patricia started reading Gloria Steinem, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde. She consumed stories of women who had refused to be invisible. Something inside her woke up. She looked at her 42-year marriage and asked a dangerous question. Is this what I want, or is this what I was told I should want? And the answer terrified her. Here's something crucial. Patricia didn't leave Robert in a moment of passion. She didn't pack a bag and run out the door. She didn't stage a dramatic exit. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. She planned, and this planning would take 42 years to come to fruition. Starting around age 62, Patricia began doing something ordinary. She opened a separate bank account just for emergencies. She put money away, $50 here, $100 there. Amounts so small Robert never noticed, amounts that seemed like nothing until they became something. At the same time, she documented everything, every act of disrespect, every moment overlooked, every time her work was credited to Robert. She kept journals, saved receipts, photographed financial documents. From outside, Patricia looked like who she'd always been, a devoted wife, a supportive partner, a woman content in her role. But inside, she was gathering evidence, not for revenge, for survival. If I'm going to leave, I need to leave smart, she told herself. As a Black woman, I need to be strategic about every single thing. For the next 6 years, Patricia became a quiet architect of her own freedom. She secretly consulted a lawyer, learned about asset division, spousal support, her rights. She took online courses to refresh professional skills. She networked with former colleagues. Most would call this paranoid, suspicious, but Patricia had studied enough Black feminist literature to know something profound. I am not responsible for his comfort if it comes at the cost of my survival. She understood that in the law's eyes, in society's eyes, her sacrifice meant nothing. She understood that Robert's comfort had always been prioritized over her humanity. If she was going to reclaim her life, she needed to do it in a way the system couldn't deny. She couldn't just hope, she needed proof. She couldn't just leave with feelings of injustice, she needed documentation. She couldn't just ask, she needed to demand from a position of power. Then came March 15th, the day Patricia's mother died. For Patricia, this wasn't just losing a parent, it was the end of the old Patricia, the end of invisibility. She spent the morning at the hospital with her mother's hand in hers. When they got home, the house was quiet the way houses are after a death. Everything felt fragile. Patricia went upstairs to change. Robert called her down. "We need to talk," he said. Patricia had spent 6 years planning for the moment she would leave. She had never planned for him to ask first. "I know you've been different lately. I'm done with this marriage. I want a divorce." Patricia's heart stopped. Then she felt something unexpected, relief. "Okay," she said simply. "Pack your things. I want you out." Robert didn't know Patricia had spent 6 years preparing for this exact scenario. Patricia went upstairs and calmly packed her most important items. She packed documents, marriage certificate, birth certificate, social security card, records, financial journals, photographs, evidence of infidelities, essentials, clothes, toiletries, jewelry, evidence, the receipts, contracts, everything that proved she wasn't crazy. She moved with clarity that comes from 6 years of preparation. When she came downstairs, Robert's patience had worn thin. He threw her remaining belongings onto the lawn. Clothes, shoes, memories, scattered like trash. The neighbors saw, the mailman saw, everyone saw. And Patricia did something remarkable. She didn't react, didn't yell, didn't cry. She simply picked things up. One daughter tried to help, tears streaming. "Don't cry," she told her, with an almost supernatural calm. I had spent 42 years being invisible. One more day of emotional pain wasn't going to undo 6 years of preparation. I had my evidence, I had my plan, I had my freedom. His anger was just noise. That's when Patricia's real story began. What Patricia did over the next 18 months became a masterclass in strategic divorce and financial independence. First, she secured housing. She had found a rental house in a safe neighborhood. The lease was already under her name. Robert didn't even know it existed. When she walked out on the day of her mother's funeral, she went directly there. No homelessness, no panic, no uncertainty, because Patricia had planned every single step. The next morning, she met with a Black female divorce lawyer specializing in asset division. Patricia walked in with binders. Yes, actual physical binders. In one binder, every financial document from 6 years, proof of her household contributions, documentation of her family finance management, evidence of her unpaid labor raising children, records of supporting Robert's career, photographs and family life documentation, her journals documenting emotional labor and dismissal. In a second binder, proof of Robert's infidelities, documentation of financial inconsistencies, evidence of hidden assets, the lawyer said, "I have never seen a client come in this prepared." Patricia responded, "I've had 42 years to prepare. I wasn't wasting another minute." Over 18 months, Patricia negotiated an agreement that would have seemed impossible. She secured 50% of marital assets, spousal support for 15 years, separate retirement benefits, complete financial independence. The judge commented that he had rarely seen documentation this thorough. Patricia smiled and said nothing. She had earned this moment through 6 years of quiet, strategic preparation. But now came the hardest part, the loneliness. Patricia had spent 42 years with someone, even when that someone didn't see her, didn't appreciate her, didn't value her. They were there. The house was full. There was structure. Suddenly, at 68, Patricia was alone in a way she hadn't been since she was 26. It was terrifying. She sat in her quiet house, the house she had bought with her secret savings, the house she had earned, and felt isolation's weight. No one to cook for, no one to manage, no one to serve. Patricia had to ask herself the hardest question. If she wasn't needed, was she still valuable? And here's what happened that separates Patricia's story from so many others. She didn't immediately find someone new to serve. She didn't recreate the same dynamic. She did something radical. She learned to value herself. She enrolled in community college classes, not for a degree, for learning. She took pottery, creative writing, African American history seminars. She volunteered at a legal aid clinic, helping other women navigate divorce. She traveled alone for the first time in her adult life. She stayed at bed and breakfasts, read books, walked on beaches. She joined a book club of women over 60 who had all been divorced or separated. They read Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Black women writing about resilience and power. One member said, "The first time I did something just for me, I cried. It felt selfish." Patricia responded, "Selfishness is taking what belongs to you. Your life belongs to you." This deserves more attention because the real victory wasn't the settlement. The real victory was Patricia deciding she was worth the investment of her own time. For the first time in 42 years, she was working on a project unrelated to anyone else's advancement. She was working on Patricia. 3 years after divorce, Patricia did something shocking. At 71, she went back to school for a certificate in mediation and conflict resolution. She wanted to help women navigate the same waters. She wanted to be the person she had needed at 26. She became certified, started a practice, helped women understand their financial rights, helped them see patterns of invisibility before they became 42 years. She became, in many ways, the woman she was supposed to be. Not the woman she was told to become, not the woman her marriage required, but the woman she actually was. When asked, "Don't you regret those 42 years? Don't you wish you'd left earlier?" Patricia said, "I regret the invisibility, the belief that my value was in my service, but I don't regret the years themselves. I loved my children. I was present. I built a life, even if I wasn't building my own. The question isn't whether I should have left sooner. The question is, how many other women will wait 42 years before claiming their freedom?" And that became her mission. Patricia's story isn't simple, and I want to make sure we're not simplifying it. There are hard questions embedded in her narrative. First, was it right for Patricia to stay 42 years? That's not the question to ask. The real question is, why did she believe invisibility was the price of marriage? The answer is because we live in a world that teaches women exactly that. We're taught that our value is in what we do for others, that love means self-annihilation, that a good woman is invisible. Patricia didn't fail. The system failed Patricia. Second question, is Patricia bitter? Does she spend her days angry at Robert? No, she's not bitter. This might be the most powerful part of her story. Patricia talks about Robert with something like compassion. Robert did the best he could with the consciousness he had. He was raised in a system teaching women's labor isn't real labor. He thought he was being a good husband. This doesn't mean Robert was right. It doesn't mean he deserves absolution. It means Patricia has refused to let anger become her life story. She chose something harder, understanding. Third, what about her children? Patricia's adult children were devastated. They loved both parents. They'd benefited from her labor without understanding its cost. Some initially blamed her. How could you do this to Dad? Patricia's response was devastating in its simplicity. I did this for me, not to him. If you can't understand the difference, we need to talk about what I've taught you about women. It took time. Eventually they understood, because Patricia wasn't asking them to choose. She was asking them to see her. Fourth, isn't this story about a privileged woman? Yes, absolutely. Patricia had access to education, the internet, a lawyer, savings. She didn't face the dangers of more precarious economic situations. And Patricia knows this. She doesn't present her story as universally accessible. But while not every woman can do exactly what Patricia did, every woman can do something like it. One small act of self-protection, one small document, one small piece of evidence that their life is their own. That's a message worth spreading. Fifth, why didn't Robert change? Why didn't he see her value? He didn't know. Patricia was so good at planning, so good at maintaining normalcy, that Robert was genuinely shocked when she left. When divorce papers were served, his first response was disbelief, then anger, then late reconciliation attempts. By then, Patricia had moved on. This disrupts the fantasy that if we make our pain visible, if we ask clearly, if we love hard enough, the person will change. Sometimes they won't. That's not failure on your part. That's failure on theirs. Patricia didn't leave to punish Robert into seeing her. She left because she accepted he might never see her, and she was unwilling to make her existence contingent on his vision. And this brings me to why I'm telling you this today. Somewhere right now, there's a woman feeling invisible. A woman who sacrificed her career, her dreams, believing this is what love requires. A woman keeping a secret journal because it's the only place her pain feels real. A woman at 25, 35, 45, 65, asking herself dangerous questions. I want to tell that woman something. Your invisibility is not your fault, but reclaiming visibility is your responsibility. Not your fault. We live in a system profiting from women's unpaid labor, but your responsibility. Once you see the system, you have a choice. You can stay, but consciously, knowing what it costs. Or you can leave in a way that protects you, honors you. You can plan the way Patricia planned, document the way Patricia documented, prepare the way Patricia prepared, and you can refuse to let anyone else's comfort become your life sentence. Patricia is now 76. She still volunteers, still helps women, still reads, still travels, still lives with intention. When asked about regrets, my only regret is that it took so long to believe I was worth the effort, worth independence, worth taking up space. But I'm making up for lost time. It's never too late to claim your life. It's never too late to say no, demand respect, refuse invisibility. It's never too late to start preparing for the life you actually want. Before you leave, I need to ask something. Answer in the comments because your response matters. Have you ever felt invisible in a relationship? What did it take to claim visibility? This isn't just a question, it's an invitation, because women's stories deserve to be told. Your story is one of them. Comment below, share your journey, because the next woman watching might need your permission to see herself. If Patricia's story resonated, if it made you question your own life, like this video, because the algorithm decides whether stories like this reach women who need them. If you're not subscribed, join us. Every week we bring stories of women who refused invisibility. And for Patricia's full journey and advice for women navigating divorce, we have extended interviews in our Patreon community. Patricia's final message to anyone feeling trapped: the world will never compensate you for invisibility. It doesn't matter how well you serve. If you wait for others to recognize your value, you might wait your entire life. So do something radical. Recognize it yourself. See yourself. Value yourself. Prepare for yourself. Make your life about yourself. Not selfishly, survival-wise. That says, I matter. My dreams matter. My independence matters. My freedom matters. And I am worth every effort to claim it. That's Patricia's message. I hope it becomes yours too. Thank you for spending 90 minutes with me. That means everything. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, be seen, be heard, be valued, because your story matters. This is Her Untold Stories. Goodbye for now.